And you're very welcome back to Kilkenny Today. Nicki Smith standing in, as I said, for Nicola Brennan, and delighted to be here. Thank you so much for all your texts and messages and contributions. Some very heated responses to MEP Cynthia Limerick there and electric vehicles, but I think it's more so to do with electric vehicles than Cynthia herself. Anyway, my next guest is on the line now. I think joining me from Dublin, am I right? Annaig Birdie, what a lovely name. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I'm based in Dublin.
So an unusual story, this. I think it's just an aspect of this story that hasn't really been covered all that much. You are the president and is it co-founder of something called Not All Gays? That's the name of your foundation.
Yes. So we're an LGB organisation. We advocate for lesbians, gays and bisexuals based on sexual orientation because all of the other groups, the NGOs, LGBTQ, none of them are advocating for just the sexual minorities. They actually are heavily focused on gender and the other letters on the plus.
Okay.
So that's why we set up.
So you're looking to essentially emancipate yourself from the other group in the alliance. That's what you're trying to do. Or you've already done it.
Yeah, more or less, because sexuality is not the same thing as a gender identity or how you decide to present yourself. It's an innate, immutable characteristic of people. There's heterosexual, homosexual and bisexual, and that's not something that, it's not an identity. It's just
fair point, absolutely fair point. So 2 years ago, am I right in thinking you came together, a group of you, to set up this organisation?
Yes, we set up in response to the hate speech legislation that was coming through, because very often in current politics in Ireland especially, the politicians will kind of wave the rainbow flag and say it will benefit and that it's for LGBTQ causes that they're bringing this through, and the LGBTQ was heavily weaponized in the hate speech debates. But we ourselves, because I'm a lesbian, and I say that no matter how a biological male identifies, I will not be in a relationship with them, because biological male on its same-sex attraction, and that is something that's based in sex-based reality. But we were going to be liable for possible investigation under the hate speech, because it was so vague and there was no definition of hate, and it was completely a subjective interpretation of what was hateful. And I'm regularly called hateful for saying that I'm a lesbian that won't date biological males who call themselves women.
Okay, now I can understand where the problem is here. I absolutely can. But what I find really interesting, and a better word than interesting, but what puzzled me was the fact that, so you organised a conference recently, the first of its kind in Ireland. Your organisation organised it on the 30th of May, am I right? And you invited a lot of guest speakers to talk about various issues pertaining to your, LGB group, we'll say, and women's issues and women's rights and all of that. And nobody would talk to you about it and help you promote it.
Yeah, it was at this stage, we've been active for quite a while now. It's been 2 years, and I myself, just as a women's rights campaigner, as an individual beforehand, there's very little willingness to discuss this. I think it was Hugh Linehan actually in the Irish Times today said that, the fourth pillar has kind of failed in that aspect and reporting on this side of the argument when it comes to gender identity politics. And we sent out press releases to all of the mainstream media, the Irish Times, Independent, and even the Sunday Independent, who has previously covered this topic from a more neutral standpoint. Even they didn't bite, which is shocking. We're a group of self-funded lesbians, gays and bisexuals in our 20s and 30s. This is not a for-profit thing. And we brought in people from all over the world, Australia, the USA. It was a completely international conference with experts in their field, lived experience, detransitioners, ex-partners of men who now identify as women. And it was an incredible day, very informative, but no press even they wouldn't even accept the invite or even reject it. They just completely didn't even acknowledge our existence.
Yeah, see, that's my question, really. It's not so much that you want everybody to agree with you, and they should, but that nobody would cover it or even acknowledge it, even in a negative sense. I found that really interesting and strange.
Yeah, that was really strange that no one even kind of had a negative take on it. Gript did write an article just announcing that we had announced Helen Joyce and Senator Keoghan as allies to talk about women's rights issues pertaining to surrogacy and just women's single-sex spaces, but no one else. And then it was the English media that picked up on it more, which is unfortunate because we're so often accused of importing British politics, but it is a very much needed conversation in Ireland. It's just most of the journalists in Ireland seem to just not want to have the two sides of the argument.
So what do you think is the reason for that?
I'm not really sure. Like in the UK Supreme Court ruling recently last month, we thought that maybe that would get some coverage. That was about reaffirming what was already law that had been misrepresented by the political and activist class in the UK, that single-sex spaces were based on biological sex rather than a gender identity, and sexual orientation was also based on sex-based reality. But the coverage since then has just been very focused on the other side of the argument and discussing loss of rights, which just didn't happen. No one lost any rights with that ruling. That was always the law. It just had been misrepresented. So I don't know. There was no real coverage apart from Eilish O'Hanlon in the Sunday Independent. I really don't know why.
What was Eilish O'Hanlon's take on it? What was her take on this?
So she was saying that this is a benefit for women and girls. That there's single sex spaces for a reason. It's not arbitrary reasons that we fought for them in the first place. I mean, did actually have to fight for single sex spaces in society, for not just safety, but dignity and then fairness in sport. And, and it's not just the toilets discussion. It's like rape crisis centres and really important, invaluable spaces for women and girls who need respite or might need respite in very vulnerable situations. And so she took that sort of stance that this is a good thing for women and girls, particularly. But I really don't know why the mainstream media isn't covering it from both sides of the discussion, because we should be able to openly and honestly disagree with each other and hear both sides of the argument.
Yeah, I don't understand either. I mean, I just think if you don't have a conversation, if your opponent is absurd, let them speak and show their absurdity. That's always my feeling about things. But I mean, I don't know what to say in this situation because, I really don't understand. I really don't. And I'm just being completely honest with you. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to take me a while, I think, to kind of process why that is the case. And maybe I'm missing something really simple and vital to this, but I don't get it. I don't get it. Why are we afraid to have a conversation? I think maybe, you're ready to go and you're there, but we're all just maybe a little bit behind the beat, perhaps, that maybe in 2-3 years time, you doing this would just be kind of obvious. And, I hope, I don't know. But you're feeling then, so actually pulling it all together and putting the conference together and organising speakers, because it was quite a list. I mean, tell us about some of the people that you had, who actually, were they all here in person, or did some of them phone it in? Like, what was the situation?
So everyone bar Sal Grover from Australia, she wasn't able to come
Give us
over,
a list of some of the names that were with you.
So we had Jamie Michelle, who is the head of a kind of similar group. They're called Gays Against Groomers in the United States. And she's the lesbian president and founder of that group. And then myself as the lesbian president and co-founder of Not All Gays. And then Bev Jackson, who co-founded LGB Alliance in the UK, but she was also one of the first members and the first female member of the Gay Liberation Front in the 1970s. So we had people of all ages, all political backgrounds, all walks of life talking, and it was just like a lot of us would disagree on very many things outside of this, but gay rights, women's rights, children's safety, and freedom of speech are not partisan issues. It is not a left and right issue, and we managed to bring that all together. We had a great day, and then we had great chat and drinks and socialization afterwards. So it is very disappointing that no one would cover it, because we talked about not just stuff relating to gender or sex-based rights, but discussions that other legacy LGBT youth groups they aren't discussing, they aren't touching them, such as surrogacy and the use of gay rights as a means to push it through Irish legislation, which was heavily used last year during the debate, and how it affects the women and children involved in surrogacy, and chemsex culture, which is devastating the gay community, gay men community. But gay men are dying en masse because we are not having open and honest discussions about the risks involved and the addiction involved in that. So it was a really broad range of topics, and I'm still a little bit in shock, because I'm only 27 myself, and I managed to pull all these people. Jamie flew in from the United States, people from the Netherlands, France attended. There was a guy who's originally from Bangladesh, a young gay man, and he came over and supported. So it was a really informative day about conversations that most people are not having.
And that you may not associate with a group like yours specifically, but yet pertinent and to all of us. Nick, I'm so sorry, because we are really cut for time, but I thank you for joining me, and I hope that we get to speak to you maybe at a longer juncture at some point. I would welcome that. I wish you the very best of luck, and I think this is going to be a conversation that will be on a national stage, and we're just so glad that you spoke to us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us on, Nicki.
Okay, thank you.